Hi, Josh. Hi, I'm Josh Apter from Filmmaker U, sitting in for Gordon Pergel today. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify their skill set. You can learn more about it at Filmmaker U. That's filmmaker, the letter U.com. Please like and subscribe to our channel to see more of our content and tell us what you'd like to see. Every week, we interview a film professional. This week, we are joined by editor Michael Ruscio, ACE, whose resume is too long to list here. So go on IMDb and check it out. But he has cut shows like 6 Feet Under, True Blood, Dexter, and is recently nominated for an Emmy for Three Body Problem. And we're going to talk about as much as we can in this short period of time we've got. Welcome to the show, Michael. How are you?
Thank you, Josh. Very fine. I'm happy to be here
Sure.
today.
Well,
And
we're, nonlinear editing being what it is, we'll jump to sort of the end with Three Body Problem. That's a more recent piece of work that you've done,
sure.
nominated for an Emmy. We'll get back to the beginnings, but I guess in looking at that show, I was, where Filmmaker U is about sort of teaching people about, not just it's not the buttons at all. It's really more about the craft and the sort of the why of editing. Is there anything about that? I'm sure there's stuff you approach on a new job that's eye-opening and educational, but was there something about this job that was unique and new and different from other things that you'd worked on in the past?
What was most unique about this was how everything kind of came into place with the people. I knew Minky Spiro as a director. I knew Alex Wu. I'd actually directed one of his episodes of True Blood, and then David Benioff and DB Wise I had just met. So it was a situation where there were it was something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, and it all sort of came together in a way that was really intriguing. That knowing about this episode with the ship with Judgment Day, and that how that was going to how that would be delivered to the audience, and what would be exciting about that, what you would withhold. And I think that the episode for me was interesting, that there's these centerpieces. There's three sort of showpieces, but there's about 12 minutes of dialogue, scenes, and setup. And I think that it's interesting editorially when you have a big sequence that everyone's leading up to. How you pace everything up to that is very important, because you have these titan conversations with Roz and Benedict Wong in the interrogation room. You have Benedict and Liam Cunningham in another room. You have all this. You have the beach. So there are many scenes that you need to kind of drill down on just the specifics and what's essential, so that you can get to the top of the roller coaster. And I
Hmm.
think that, looking back at it, the set piece alone is part of the episode, but the whole, and what happens before and how that is laid out, is a really critical editing task, that you're not necessarily given something splashy. You're just given two people in a room, and somehow you have to make that vital. And I think that in the editing of it, we continue to go back and forth about how we could get faster to certain lines, what lines we could drop. There are two scenes with Benedict and Ross in the beginning, yay, and we couldn't combine them because the wardrobes were different. So we had to have something that separated them. So we did
Hmm.
some restructuring in the beginning with a safe house, and even, I would say, the lead up to the Judgment Day, that was very meticulous as far as the setups. So we see the kids in the cafeteria. There's going to be children on the boat. You don't exactly know what you're going to be seeing. You've never seen these nanofibers before. You don't know how they're going to react. So there's a built-in suspense, but there's also this sort of suspension of time. And then there's the exactingness of time, because of the way that the motion of the nanofibers go towards the ship. So we always had to be very aware of what was happening when, whose demise we were going to see the most, how much we could show, and how what we wanted to save. And these are some of the editing challenges. And I would say, in any project, you're always wondering, well, what do I hold on to? What do I, build up to? And sometimes you're just watching dailies and you say, wow, that's an amazing performance. This is an amazing moment. This is an incredible camera move. I want to get to that. And you can't just get to it. You have to sort of find out, okay, what do I save that kind of shot for the very, for this very key moment? Do I tee it up? And there's never a right answer. It's sort of the film itself tells you what the right answer is. And then
Mhm.
sometimes an audience will tell you that as well, of course. But I find that the master for me is the film itself. And I feel like I'm the kind of the guardian of that galaxy, and that I need to respect what is there and what was made, on set, and at the same time knowing that there's so much manipulation that can happen in editorial, that you can, use other performances, you can do split screens, you animate,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of tools that you have. But I do try to respect sort of the kind of initial photographic realism, especially in something like this where there's CGI, there's VFX, but everything had practical elements. I mean, Mickey Spiro, the director, did an amazing job of being able to, show the human side of everything, and also just blend what we knew would be, computer generated versus what was live on set. So
Yeah, I
that
mean,
was a great combination of elements. And talking about it today, I feel really fortunate. I mean, first of all, I feel very fortunate to even have had a project to work on at all, because I know so many of my sisters and brothers are not working, and the business is in a difficult place between COVID and the strike. So I feel very fortunate to have been employed, and then to have something that was so great like this, and to have such an amazing collaboration with David and Dan and Alex was really a thrill. Plus, my assistant Josh Carley, who was really instrumental in the sound design early on, and he was a real champion and partner with me throughout.
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
it occurs to me, you have a plan, you have something that you'd like to honor, and then you have an established rhythm that you find. I like that you described it as kind of like you want to get to the top of that roller coaster,
Mm.
because this is really engineering work on your part. Like, what do you reveal? What do you hold back? And creating this rhythm over the course of that show. Um, do you find that it's, in something like this, it was there for the taking, or was it really like you were, saying, all right, well, this is what it was, this is what it's going to have to be, and we're going to use the tools at our disposal to make these changes, or how close to what it was originally shot and scripted is the actual final episode?
There are a lot of permutations of this episode. I mean, initially it picked up right after episode 4, and it was people in the room that were actually being sort of talked with, to Liam Cunningham about Thomas Wade is his character's name, that about the whole initial signal that was sent from China and everything else, and that went away. And then we changed that, and then the actual opening of the episode was from another episode. It was a floater that was in 2 other episodes, but we realized that we needed to set up Wade and Raj and this partnership right from the get-go. So it kind of becomes Raj gives him some agency right at the top of the show. So I'd say right off the bat, that was not scripted, and that
Mhm.
opens the episode.
Right.
So that was a big change. And then throughout, you know, as I mentioned, how we dealt out the deck, if you will, of scenes before we got up on board Judgment Day. Even that, like initially, the whole Judgment Day was connected so that you weren't really on the ship until later on. But we changed it so that when Benny says, Clarence says, would that it's the Judgment Day happens to be the Panama Canal. It's coming to the Panama Canal. So tease that off, and then we pulled up that scene where you sort of see the boat and you see uh, Jonathan Pryce talking to Felix, and so that changed as well. So you know, and then of course, anytime you make a picture change, when you look at the whole thing, then something else changes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the curious thing about editing is that, you know, you watch it so many times and you think, oh, this part's slow, and then you change something else, like that part's not slow anymore, and then something else is slow, or something else needs to be massaged or isn't working. So it always continues to evolve. And you know, I think that as an editor, you need to be present almost like an audience. And even though you've seen it multiple times, you have to somehow find that part of your mind that can look at it fresh.
Right. Well, sometimes, I mean, I remember doing this, and it was the first time it happened. I was working on a feature film, and the director went away for a week with his family, and we
Mm-hmm.
had been beating our faces against this thing for, you know, 3, 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
and it, you know, it's hard to watch it. It's all becomes that sort of, you know, it's just shots and faces. And it became a movie to us when we came back and sat down after a week. We sat
Mm-hmm.
down and watched it, and it was amazing how recharged we were, how obvious the things were that needed to be adjusted, just by taking some time away. And I know, and your schedules probably don't allow for something like that, but you know,
The
that
one
was
thing that the one thing that I do try to allow myself, you know, in that regard, is to watch from home
Mhm,
without having any buttons available, to sit down and to look at an output as an audience. And I think that that's a helpful little trick, because we're
mhm,
so engaged, and you can just you're so tied to the, you know, keyboard or the mouse or the pencil, whatever people work with,
right.
that it kind of finding ways to make distance. And as you say, even sometimes with a fast schedule, just taking a walk, walking the dog, you know, I go to a yoga class and ride a horse, and those are
Mhm,
things that I do for sort of the natural world,
mhm.
which is great to sort of just clear your head and cleanse your palate. And I find that really helpful. And it's sort of a down and dirty fast way to do what you're talking about, getting away
Mhm.
for a week or longer.
Yeah. Well, that was a luxury, but I remember Walter Murch used to write about putting little action figures on the at the bottom of his flatbed or something on that screen, on the view screen, so it looked like he was in a movie theater, and it had that proportion of something big. I mean, it wasn't just to be an audience, but it was also to get a sense of the scale when you're cutting for something that's going to be, you know, on a big screen, what that might feel like. Because to you, looking at it on a moviola or a flatbed, it'll never take on those proportions. But to imagine what it must be like to someone sitting in a giant room looking at it like that, there's all kinds of tricks that we use. But um, so no, it's very interesting. You had mentioned a couple of your answer was long. I should have been taking notes.
There's a lot to
Um,
unpack, and
no, it's great. I mean, it's and to be recognized for it obviously isn't why you do it, but there's something probably really nice about, like, look, people really enjoyed that. And you know, we'll see. You know, it's just it's always nice. It's a nice pat on the back to say, like,
well,
this was
Josh,
good work.
it was very much a thrill to receive this nomination. And you know, after I've, I've been in the business for a minute, and to sort of be recognized for this episode, which I'm very proud of. And there were a lot of moving parts and a lot of people on the conveyor belt to make it happen. And I felt really privileged and honored and touched to be nominated.
A lot of people talk about, you know, the first 15 minutes of the movie Up as sort of this incredible powerhouse of imagery and emotion. And I agree, but I also remember the first time I watched 6 Feet Under. I watched it like when you had to sit down and actually watch TV because you couldn't record it or stream it, or you just had to be there. So and we did it with a bunch of friends. So it was a little folklore episode for us to sit and watch together around our campfire. And it was one of those things, like, I can't believe they came up with a way to honor the show and exit the show, because the technique of doing what they did
Mm.
so beautifully fit every intro you had seen for the past, how many, it was 5 seasons it ran.
Yes.
And so to watch those introductions unfold where different, you know, these characters, you see like how they, you know, die, and to honor that as part of the thematic material for each episode. And then to end this way, I'd love to get your thoughts on, I mean, I could go into the mechanics of like when you see the film looks like it's flashed, or when she's moving suddenly in in high speed to sort of propel us into her future. But what was it like to, to take that on, and then to sort of experience everybody's reactions to the end of this beloved show?
It was a great sort of finale with, I mean, I worked with Alan Ball again on True Blood, but it
Yep.
was a great collaboration for us. And that there was, of course, a design to the piece. And at the same time, you're right that we had to sort of slowly, the Prius, it's sort of slow, and like everything is really syncopated. And that Sia music, which I needed to kind of expand, like initially I put the whole thing together as like, whoa, we're gonna run out of Sia. And so then I music edited it so that we had enough so it would be, great. And at that point, that song wasn't as well known as it is today when people
Right.
go into any place and they hear that song and they're like, people spontaneously burst into tears. It wasn't like that then. But
Right.
I would say like that it delivered grace, and in a way the grace and death that the show did. As
Hmm.
far as the sort of mechanics of it, we had to also be careful. Like a lot of people fell over to die, so we had to like
Mm.
when we could go to white, and that what would how much you had to really see. I mean, you kind of know,
Hmm.
and as soon as the card comes up, well, that was Brenda, and great how Brenda's like, Billy's blabbering on and
Literally talked to death.
talk to death. So really great. And it's interesting, like it's sort of an interesting parallel, if I can draw it back a little bit to Three Body Problem, is that that was sort of a future that will be presented, and that you look now and that, Priuses are now Teslas and electric cars, and we've already passed the years, and then like and then thinking about the 400 years in Three Body Problem and what that distance is, and even within the series itself, carrying you from China to present day, and that sort of that stretch of time, I think, is really a fascinating parallel, and that how what time does to us and what we do with it. And I think that the sort of takeaway from 6 Feet Under, starting out, at that whole sequence pretty much does really start off with, I just want to celebrate in that crazy Nate dance,
Hmm.
because there's a value in life, and there's a value in understanding the time that you have is limited, and that you do the most that you can, or that you love the most that you are able to, or fortunate to. And that I believe that that is why there's a staying power to that episode, especially that ending, because it's a reminder of the fragility of life and the grace of which death happens to all of us. It's the great Democrat.
Yeah. I
And
mean, just the beginning of the sequence when Nate says to her, like, you can't take a picture that's already gone.
yeah,
He's
it's
such a
already gone.
great voice to sort of propel her. And then, I was thinking of just as a moment as an editor, you know, that little piece of him in the rearview mirror, he's never in there fully.
Right,
He's
right.
constantly disappearing. And it was just like this
Keep disappearing.
beautiful moment of just like literal rearview mirror of her life, but just that chasing after her, but knowing she's not meant to stay there. He's not meant to catch her. She has to
Right,
move forward.
right. She has to move
Um,
forward, and and thinking that going from that to looking up into the Piccadilly Circus for signs that say you were bugs is an interesting bookend for
mhm.
me.
I love them all. I mean, there were some just kind of amazing connection points, seeing her photographs at the end, sort of all her
Mhm.
early work, the pictures of Ted, re-engaging with him. I mean, it just, and it also dealt with it in humor, right? You're saying like Brenda's literally talked to death.
Mhm.
When David sees, I forgot his husband's name, I forgot, but he sees him
Keith,
as Keith, as a young man playing football right before
right.
he dies. Is like you're playing with time in a sequence where you're playing with time, and it all completely makes sense. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's amazing how that is, and it's just, if I may bring it back to sort of the playing with time with Three Body Problem, which we also did as well, and that I think that these, you know, that was a plum, the finale of 6 Feet Under, and certainly this was another plum, and they both have that kind of manipulation of time as a parallel element to them. And I think as editors, you do sort of wage against time a little bit with what you're doing. And sometimes you're under, in a network television show, sometimes you're under an actual time constraint, and sometimes you're just under whatever the market can bear if you're doing a film or if you're doing a streaming series, that you're always sort of racing against time. You're racing against the time of schedule, everything else. So it all comes together in a fascinating, and you sort of end up putting everything together to the time that you have. It's like that if you have 3 months, that's, you work up to the last minute. If you have a year and a half, you're still working up to the last minute. And it's funny how that is for editors and for all people, but I think especially in post-production, because there's that feeling that, okay, we have to get this right. And I think that was the feeling with the finale of 6 Feet Under, and that was certainly the feeling of Three Body Problem with the Sofon sequence, getting that right. What are the right lines? How much does she say? How much do you see? So there are always these decisions of getting it, to the point where you sort of say, aha, we're there. And now we have to go to the mixing stage.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now.
Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
They say that it's like a project is never finished, it's abandoned, right? That's like an editor's.
Yeah, it's sort of true. I mean, people ask me if I watch things on the air, and I do, to see how they air or to share it with somebody who hasn't seen it before. But I can't have a keyboard next to me and do something that feels like a blooper when I watch it on the air. Just the way it goes.
Right. And so timing wise, I know we don't have a ton of time left. Speaking of time, in terms of how much, your schedule for Three Body per episode is roughly the same. Well, how much time do you get?
No, I think that we had a little bit more time because we did some pickups. We did a couple of pickups, and we did, a couple times we did pickups for the Sofon sequence. So that kind of made the schedule go a little bit longer than it was initially going to go. I think that we did have a lot of time ultimately, because there were things that were reshot, and then ultimately because there were 4 editors altogether, and the 2 UK editors, went on to other projects. And so Anna Hauger and I, who were in the US, we had each adopted half of the rest of the series. So I had Judgment Day, and I adopted the 1st and 2nd and 4th episodes, and then she adopted 3, and she had 6, and then she did 7 and 8. So even after the initial schedule, we already had busted past that, ticker tape, and then we had to continue on. So, and then even with episode 1, we actually delivered episode 1 and then shot a new scene at the end of December of 23. So, and we went back in, and that was like quickly. I was on set for 2 days, and we edited it really fast and put it into the episode.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, it sounds terrific. I guess we have to wrap up now, which stinks because I could talk for easily another half an hour because you have so much other work. I will say my wife's entire family's from New Orleans, uptown. And
oh wow!
I'm going to be watching Your Honor. I haven't watched it yet, and I keep hearing you got to watch it. And I was just there like a month ago, so it's really like it's in my blood now. As hot as it is down there, but I'm going to take a look at that, and we have maybe we'll have you back so we can talk about more of your work, because it's always too much. It's great. I'd love to leave people wanting more, but I want more. So now I have to ask
All right, well, let me know, Josh. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate that Netflix, made this happen and brought me onto the show, and I'm really happy to be an Emmy nominee.
Yeah, congratulations. If there's one, so we always ask people if there's like a secret guilty pleasure movie or show or something that's just like, you know, a go-to when you want inspiration or something? Is there anything, you know, you'd like to share with us in terms of like, this is my happy place?
Huh. I do enjoy Seinfeld. Sort of as something to go back to, that
Yeah.
they sort of take the test of time a little bit. Mostly things that are comedic I go to, that are, you know, funny. I like live comedy shows too, that, you know, they've done such a great job over the years of doing those, you know, John Mulaney and these kinds of things. I love to watch things that make me laugh and take me out of myself.
That's a great thing to do. It's therapeutic, and it really does, like, you know, it's a nice thing to say, like, I laughed my rear end off, and you can't do much else when you're laughing that hard.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah,
You had
thank
something
you,
else?
Josh.
That's it for this week. That was a great conversation with Michael Ruscio. Like I said, I could talk to him for another 2 hours about his work. But you can check us out at filmmakeru.com. That's filmmakeru.com. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Leave some comments. Let us know what you want to see in the future. We love doing these videos. We do them all the time. Again, I'm Josh Apter. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.